questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. Okay, Tom.
For my ongoing understanding and increasing my growth, I go back and listen to old teachings, and I'm always amazed at either things I missed or just popped up. It's just an amazing experience. But a couple years ago, I was having trouble with the Torah study because it seemed like I was at the time turning it on TV, watching the Torah study. That was a particular thing. And then I went about my week. So I adopted a process that I went through the week. And prior to the Torah study, the first thing I'd do, I'd listen to the audio scripture readings. Thank you, Mashira. And then I would sit down and I would read that week's portion. And the idea for me was I was trying to get my head into the game so that when the Torah study was there, my head was already there. And then I started reading some reference materials like Chumash and that sort of thing. This actually helped me to understand some generalities going into the Torah study. But then when I listened to the Torah study here, the meat of the Torah came into play then. And my question, and that's why it's a question of clarity, is it unwise or is it a necessary thing for me to read these reference materials to help me to get into that?
Well, look, I don't know if they're helpful or not. I mean, look, when you read the Chumash is the first 5 books. That's what the Hebrew wording would be for that. If you go and buy a Chumash, it's going to be the English and the Hebrew for the Deuteronomy, Genesis to Deuteronomy. But the thing is, you're getting a lot of Rashi in the commentary in the Chumash, okay? And I don't sound like Rashi. And don't give a lot of information that matches up with Rashi. So, and Rashi does say a few things that I'm like, really? Okay, so I don't know how helpful that is. I don't read those. I have in the past just to see what they say. I didn't find them particularly useful, all right? I do try to give you everything you do need to get out of the Torah portions. What I think is useful is that you are, having read it, familiar with what we're about to read, so you're ready to receive. And when I jump from scripture to scripture just to point out some things on the verses I want to point out, you already know the context of those verses because you know you've listened to it and you've read it. So you've done 2 things. If you really want to be prepared, go listen to last year's or the year before's or the year before's and hear what I said on those teachings. So that you've read it. Maybe you've also listened to the Torah portions that Shira does that are on the website, the audio scripture readings, and then listen to some of the older teachings. And you'll be amazed how much I say exactly the same, and some of the other things I emphasize a little bit differently each year, okay? You're not gonna hear me contradict anything I've already said, but I may just decide on time allowance, I mean, if we have more or less time, to go deeper or less deep or skip a few things I referenced one year that I didn't reference. Like last night, I skipped a couple of things at the end that I could have referenced that I just didn't have any more time for, right? And that would be what I'd rather advise you to do, okay? All right, welcome. Kelly.
Hi, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I have a question in Romans chapter 7.
Okay.
14 to the end of the chapter. Because when I read this, I can see myself, and it concerns me. So I have some, so I'm wondering, through bad habits, just my flesh, my stubbornness, how would I try to change and increase my faith, have more humility, and actually grow? So I work towards doing all the commandments like you talked about last night.
I know I covered this really well in a couple of teachings where we kind of touched on Romans and especially this chapter. The main point here is really 2 things, right? One is you have to recognize that there's a war going on in your members, right? You have this battle between what you think is right and wrong and what he says is right and wrong, right? That's the battle between the law in my flesh, the law in my members, and his law, Okay, the law in your members is just you deciding something's okay and not okay, as opposed to him deciding something's okay and not okay. And then the verse, I guess it gets really challenging, is the idea that says, the good that I wish to do, I don't do, but the evil I do not wish to do, I do. All right? You got to realize that there's what I desire intellectually versus what I desire emotionally. So what he's saying is, the good I wish to do intellectually gets messed up by the evil that I don't want to do, but I do anyway because that's where my emotion is. This is a battle between the mind and the heart, okay? Because the heart is the one that has its own law. The mind, you can change whichever law you want to put there. You could decide to do your own law like the heart wants. You could decide to do his law. That's an intellectual choice. So what he says is, look, the good I wish to do, the good meaning the Torah, he says, I don't always do that. But the evil that I don't want to do, up here I don't want to do it, but down here I do, so that's why I do it. Because everything we do ultimately is because we want to. Now the question is, are we wanting to hear intellectually or are we wanting to hear emotionally? But you are doing what you do because you want to. Well, no way, I do all these terrible things. I don't want, no, you do want to do them. You don't do what you don't want to do. So that means when there was a battle, the emotion won when you did what you really didn't want to do, because you wanted to emotionally. Up here, you didn't want to. You got to understand, though, the emotion will always win on equal footing. In other words, it's stronger. When it's put on a par with each other, it's stronger. You need a lot more intellectual strength to battle against an emotional desire. If they're on any equal footing at all, or even if the intellectual is lower, you're done. The emotion's going to win every time. Emotion is stronger than intellect. Logic and reasoning is not stronger than emotion. How many of you have ever tried to logically reason with an emotional person? Did it work very well? No, it can't, because they can't receive through that emotion. But when you're in a logical place where your heart and your emotion are calm, you can reason, you can be reasoned with. Which is why you don't argue and try to reason with someone that's losing their mind and screaming and yelling, because they can't receive anyway. You got to wait till they calm down to try to reason with them. Okay? So when you're trying to overcome the challenges in yourself, Kelly, understand that that's all that's happening here. A desire in you that's emotional, when you end up doing things you don't like and don't really want to be doing, is because it was stronger than the intellectual understanding and desire to do what's right. According to him, not right according to you. Okay? Now, where we really get in trouble is, there's two levels of this. The first level is, you know it's wrong, you still want to do it though. Up here you know it's wrong, and now you're upset with yourself because you keep doing it anyway. The second level's worse. You still want to do it, you know it's wrong, so you spin it to convince yourself it's not wrong. You make allowances that it's okay to do what you already knew originally was not okay. Now you're really in trouble. Because now you've convinced yourself that what you did is okay when you really knew it wasn't. But because you knew you couldn't stop yourself, your best choice you thought was to convince yourself that it was just perfectly okay. But you know better, or should know better. But once you convince yourself that it's okay, this is where people say things to me like, well, I know I shouldn't have done that, but he knows my heart. Well, yeah, and that's why you're in trouble. It was your heart that got you in trouble. So now you're spinning it to justify your emotion. Does that help?
Yes, that helps me a lot. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. All right? All right, Deirdre.
So I like to post verses or rabbi trails on Facebook, but I have Christian family members that like to post underneath of it, and they use the J name, and it's not really like they're contradicting me. Like, do I just let them do it? Or like, what's the correct thing that I'm supposed to do as a Torah observant?
Okay, we're going to ask the questions, right?
Yes.
Question one, why are you doing it? What are you hoping to accomplish by making the post?
Okay, oh, we're doing this now. Okay. That's just how I like to do. Like, I like to do it. Like,
You just like to put that out there and express yourself.
No, not expressing myself exactly. Like, it's part of.
What are you hoping to accomplish by posting it?
I want to share your teaching, and like.
Okay, then are you expecting and desiring comments?
Not.
Then shut the comments off.
Okay.
No, this is why I'm asking these questions, because you do know you can shut your comments off. Okay, just post it and turn off comments. And then you don't have to worry about anybody saying anything you don't like. You also realize you can delete the comments. At least it won't be on the public post. It'll still be theirs. They'll see it, but But just shut the comments off. We post it all the time in the m.t.o.i group and just shut the comments off. Because I really didn't want anybody arguing with or making dumb comments that I would have to then deal with later, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it always has to start with the first question. Why are you doing it? Okay? I'm doing it because it's the way I want to express myself. Fine. What are you expecting the people reading it to do? And so that's how you then decide what to do next. Okay? If you're wanting comments, because you are doing something to get comments, then you have to accept that some of those comments may not be exactly your favorite thing, but you're going to allow it because that's what you were looking for. Okay? So you got to ask those questions. Okay, next.
Okay. And this is just kind of to help me, because I have struggles with exhaustion. So I am wondering, because we're not supposed to do our pleasure on Shabbat, but if that thing is like coloring and it'll help me stay awake, am I allowed to do that so that I don't fall asleep? Especially like Friday night Torah study, it's hard for me to stay up like past like to 12 almost, or even during Shabbat services sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting what I need and I'm relaxing, but I'm also trying to listen. So I'm trying to figure out how to stay awake, because my body is just wanting to be relaxed and because it knows that it's safe as I'm listening, but...
Or you could go to sleep and you can watch it the next day. You could. All right, look, I want to, see, here's the problem. If I say something, I'm going to say it anyway, but if I say this, you guys are going to take it and run with it in all the wrong ways, all right? There are those of us that either have a challenge, staying up, and there are also those of us that have serious ADD problems, that have problems focusing. And sometimes it's helpful to have something else somewhat distracting the mind so that we can actually focus. Whether it's tapping on something or clicking something or something like that, or just doodling or something, if that actually is legitimately helping you to focus, I will say that's fine. But I'm not giving you permission to do your pleasure if you just happen to like to color and you happen to like to do whatever, okay? I do sometimes do mindless clicking things on my phone if I'm having a real ADD moment. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. It's just something to occupy my mind. You understand what I'm saying? If you're doing it because it's what you want to do and you're enjoying it, then you're missing the point. Does that make any sense to anybody? Okay? Okay? And so the question is, can you be honest?
Yes.
Okay. So I wasn't asking that out loud, but this is for everybody. Okay? If you can be intellectually honest with yourself, not emotionally honest, because it's hard to be emotionally honest, okay? But intellectually honest, that I'm doing this because it actually makes my ability to focus or to pay attention and not fall asleep work better, then that's fine. It's not doing your pleasure necessarily, right? It's helping you to do. But don't spin this to justify what you want to do. And only you will know, and by the way, I won't care what you do, he'll know if you're spinning it, okay? If you don't need to be doing something other than focusing, then you don't need to be doing it.
And that's why I asked, because that is something I like to do, and I'm trying to figure out how I can fix the problem, and that was the first thing that popped in my head.
Listen, I get it. Some of you have sat in counseling with me watching me tap my phone while I'm counseling you. Not because I wanted to tap, sometimes I'm in such a bad ADD place that's the only way I'm going to be able to focus. And I focus quite well, and you see that the counseling works quite well. But you have to know where your psycho-emotional struggles are. I do have them. You're not the only ones. Everybody has them on some level, okay? There are days I can hardly get anything done because I just cannot get myself to focus. I hate writing new teachings because it requires a tremendous amount of extended focus, okay? And so it's just really tough. But you got to know yourself. Now, praise Yah that he doesn't require me to actually write out the teaching, like everything I'm going to say, because that would never get done, okay? He allows for me to think it through, bullet point it, list the verses, and just get up and talk. But even putting that together, for me, is a brutal struggle. Not because the information's so hard, or putting it together, it's just the required amount of focused attention for the period of time is just very hard for me, okay? Anyway, what else?
That's it.
All right, good.
Thank you.
All right, Pete.
So this is what I originally wanted to come up and talk about. And what I wanted to talk about is a teaching I would like to see you do is one on truth. Because you've done sin and you've done evil. But I'd like to see you do a teaching series on truth. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that puzzled me was every reference, particularly in the Brit, where Yeshua says truly, prefacing a phrase, and you teach us that Yeshua is the truth, the Torah is the truth, his word is the truth. I get that. But if Yeshua is the truth, why would he feel the need to preface any statement with truly? And should we put extra emphasis on what follows that? And so I did what I think you do is I went back and looked at where this word first appears in the Bible. In the first place that truly is mentioned is in Genesis 27:24, where it says, "Are you truly my son, Esau?" And he said, "Yes, I am." Well, that was a lie, so that was not helpful to me to discern what truly meant.
I think what you're seeing is, and I'm not against the idea of doing it on truth. I mean, I've covered truth a lot in other teachings, in different places. Oh, and by the way, I was going to say this earlier, so I'm glad it kind of came up. If you're reading, and you should be reading your scriptures, especially if you're looking at, the four Gospels, or if you're looking at some of the letters, you notice that topics are covered in a matter of a number of verses, maybe a chapter or two, and then topics change. Sometimes they change multiple times in a chapter. So there's not like an extensive amount of stuff going on all in one place. So when you get a teaching from me, it's a very different format to really go everywhere to pull something together, all right? But the information is still given as part of some bigger thing that's going on. So don't look at me like and say, I know you said this in other teachings. Well, then go back and listen to other teachings and find it, because it was important. Just like, when we read the parable of the talents, that's not the entire chapter. It's a part of the chapter. When we read the parable of the sower, the seed, it's part of a chapter, right? Other things are going on that are somewhat connected, and maybe they're not even connected at all, because he may have gone to another location, still in the same chapter, and started teaching something else. And so it's okay if some of these things are covered in other places without having a separate place for it. Now, at some point, we're getting all the teachings transcribed and should be put into some sort of searchable document so that I can figure out where I said anything about whatever topic was covered, and we could tell you where in a teaching it was covered, or at least what teaching it was covered in. So we're going to try to get that worked out. But as for you, okay, the truly, when he talks, this is an idiomatic phrase that he's using that was common at the time to say, I'm confirming and telling you up front, this is the real deal. Okay, he's not just saying something, saying, truly I say to you. In other words, pay attention, I'm vouching that this is right and true. As opposed to, when he says to Jacob, are you Esau? And he said, this is a phrase that in Yeshua's day was something people would say to affirm in front of an audience, this is the truth, right?
So in Strong's, it links it to verily, which is
right.
What the KJV says, and it says the root there is aman, or amen, which
means it's agreed. In other words, I'm giving you something that we should agree on. But it's an idiomatic phrase. It's not the same as when you want me to do a teaching on truth, where truth is the Torah, the word, etc., like in the loop that I give you. Starts in John 14. He says he's the truth. Goes back to 119 and other places where you see the Torah is truth. And then it goes right back to John 1, where he says the word or the truth put on flesh. Okay?
So one of the mentions here is in Psalm 66:19, right, where it says, truly Elohim has heard me. He has given heed to the voice of my prayer, which seems, can you explain that in relation to what you were talking about earlier with prayer, that we're not changing his mind, we're not getting him to do anything?
No, the psalmist is just connecting that this is something that was the result that was based on what you asked. I mean, look, there are people that will ask for things and then come up here and give a praise report saying, see, this is what happened. We all prayed about it and look at what happened, okay? Now, you could also come up here and nothing happened and say, look, we all prayed about it and this was the answer. The answer was no. I mean, that would have been just as much a praise, so to speak, as that he did answer it, whichever way it was. And so the psalmist is just pointing at something that did happen. Okay? All right, Kendall.
Okay, I got a kashrut question, Rabbi.
Don't eat it.
Well, that might be the answer. But in the health journey that I'm on right now, my doctor has recommended full testicles, right? So, yeah. Now, don't really have a problem with eating them, but in the Taryag mitzvot, if I probably butchered that all up.
It's the 613 commandments. The Taryag mitzvot is the 613
Yeah.
commandments.
Now, in that book, it talks about how, and they attribute it to like Noahide laws and like Genesis 9, I believe it is, where it talks about not eating the flesh with the blood, life force still in it.
Right.
And they attribute that scripture to actually not being able to eat a limb from an animal that hasn't been kosher slaughtered or still alive. Could you give us a ruling on that?
Look,
Now, there is one butcher that does all dead animals that we found and stuff like that, but a general ruling on that.
I don't have anything that I can point to scripturally that says if it's a clean animal, you can't eat it, okay, whatever parts of it is. There is a particular part of the fat that it talks about, and that's the only thing it really talks about. I mean, you can eat the tongue, you can eat the organs, you can eat whatever. I mean, it's,
Now, morally, would there be moral objections to eating a piece of an animal that technically still alive?
Well, so these are things that were taken from a living animal?
They make pill form and the actual, you get the testicle, but for most of the animals, the testicles are removed young at age and then raised up for slaughter later on after they get fat and whatnot. So that's what the problem is right now.
That's an interesting one. I might need to think about that. No, not interesting like the details. Just the idea that this is something that is, as a practice, is removed anyway.
Yes.
As part of the way they deal with these animals. And then now that it's removed and then processed to be something you could eat, you're not eating it like the minute they took it off. It's something that they are then butchering and putting together, just like they would any animal that was slaughtered. It's just a piece that was taken away. I would say that's probably fine too. I'd have to, let me think more on that.
Yes, sir.
And if Elder who's watching or Rabbi Tom can remind me to bring it up at the next leader meeting for thought, but we could bring that up. So that's an interesting question.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I would like to probably talk to you to find out what you're hoping, or the doctors are hoping you'll get out of that and see if there's maybe a better way to go about it. Okay? All right, Grayson.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I have two questions.
Are you all taking Rebbinson's turn, or did you guys forget?
No,
She's allowing you all to get in front of her.
I told her I was in physical pain, and she said it's fine, and that I should go in front. I tried.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we have the understanding that God is love, and that love can be expressed harshly. It's he still loves Israel even when he sends us even when he's punishing them. But in Romans 9, verse 13, and then as well as in Malachi verses 2 and 3, it says that Yaakov I have loved, but Esau I have hated. And so how is God, who is pure love, how and why does he hate Esau? And is that word hate? Because obviously there could be a translation.
All right, so, I've seen those verses before. The problem is that there are, thankfully not too many, but there are enough or an abundance enough of these type of things where Scripture says something that we have to sit there and go, I wonder why he said that. And this is one of them. And it really doesn't give us any answer anywhere to know specifically. So we're forced to extrapolate and guess. And I really hate doing that if I can avoid it. So since it doesn't really affect anything in our walk, I leave that on the shelf. It just could be, again, if you look at Esau's life, Esau led a life that was contrary to and refused to be in line with Yah. It is from peripheral books, like Jasher, etc. There was training that was available that Jacob took that Esau didn't want. Obviously, Esau did some rebellious things in who he married and stuff just to piss off his parents, okay, and that kind of stuff. He was a man of war and angry and ready to kill his brother and all these other things. So there may be something about that, and especially that he never really changed from that, and that generationally the tribes that came out of him were very similar. So, so there could be something to that by the time you get to Romans that we're hearing. But otherwise, it's all guess. It's all guess.
Thank you. And then can I ask a second one?
Yeah.
So with...
And by the way, just one thing, hating may be a poor translation of whatever was the original and in the way translators have had to put it in, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
So with like there being like evil in the world, and that we know that eventually like the evil is going to get so great that then Yeshua comes. So when it comes to like that evil, are we supposed to like within our capacity do what we can to fight against evil within our capacity as people, or is it more of a we should know that eventually it's all going to go to evil and just stay in our lane and focus on?
All right, I need to understand what that looks like to you. What do you mean?
Okay.
Like when you say fight against it, my answer is going to be predicated on what you mean by that.
Oh, and not like a specific way, just like in general.
Look, the main thing with dealing with a world not his, go back to peace in a world not his. The main thing with dealing with evil in a world not his is adapting to and figuring out how to thrive in the world that is that way, okay? When you say fight against it, I would say do everything to not become of it, but you're in it, okay? And so, yes, you should be fighting against you becoming a part of it. So you're now a part of the problem, all right? But as far as actively fighting against it, meaning like, you know, posting things that you think are going to make it, none of these things ultimately are going to make any difference. Okay, it's going where it's going. Abba may decide to inspire something that makes it get a little better for a little while. That's happened hundreds of times in the last couple of thousand years. And then things get worse again. And then they get better, and then they get worse again. And not because anybody in particular fought against it. Just, look at Israel and Judah in the Chronicles and the Kings and Samuel subject. You know, when the king was a good king, everything went really well. When there was a bad king, it didn't. It seemed like every other king. You had that problem, okay? And so... yes, when there's an authority figure, that authority figure may lead things in a way that things get a little bit better when it comes to those kind of things. Now, I'm not talking about presidents of the country. They could care less about evil or not evil when it comes to scriptural. Now, the country may be more prosperous under one or another for a period of time, okay? Because then the next round or two, somebody else comes in and wrecks it the other way, all right? So we shouldn't get too wrapped up in that. Okay, so I would say fight against it in your own personal life so that you do not get sucked into it and that you find a way to deal with it. Okay, does that answer it more or less? Okay, good. All right, Rebbetzin Joanne.
Rabbi, this morning I got this very interesting phone call from my son, and we got talking about scriptures, and I told him he has to stop jumping around like a flea and pick where he wants to be. And he told me that he didn't want to be a Jew. And I told him, I said, I'm not a Jew. I'm an Israelite. And he goes, well, all of the scriptures were written for the Israelites, but there are no Israelites today. I said, well, I'm one. And he asked me, who are the Israelites today?
Which son was asking all this?
Ariel.
Okay. That's what I thought.
And
Ariel, if you're watching, you know better. You've listened to me teach. You've worked with me. You should know the answers to these questions.
And so I was going to answer that, but then I thought, I want to make sure I'm on the same page with you, that I'm not just saying something that I think it is.
You're correct, but you send them to go listen to, Discovering Your Identity. Understand who Israel is. Okay?
Okay, and so I started going into that with him, and he was like, his mind was like blown away that there's actually Israelites today.
Look, the Jewish community are Israelites. They are a subset of the 12. So there are, as long as there's Jews around, there are Israelites. But then we're looking at Israel as the way the scriptures describes it, which is a covenantal relationship. So anybody who covenants gets to be Israel, because that's what it actually says. And that's what Romans 11 and the olive tree and basically grafting in is all about, okay? So you have, so yeah, listen to Discovering Your Identity again. If you never listened to it, listen to it the first time. And you're always welcome to call me, and your mother's right, listen to your mother. And if that doesn't work, go ahead and listen to your father. He's a rabbi too. All right, John.
Shalom, Rabbi.
No sneezing.
No promises.
All right, go ahead.
But I have a couple questions I believe is about the walk. One is when someone comes to you and tells you tell them they're going to do something, but they don't do it, and they constantly say it over and over and over again, how you react on that?
Okay, so how do I react to that? I tell them right up front, listen, I do it or don't do it, and just don't talk to me about it anymore, okay? I don't want to hear it. Just tell them I don't, look, I appreciate that you want to say about how you're going to do something. Now, if they're doing something for me that I want done, and they keep not doing it, I'm not asking them to do it after the first or second or third time they tell me that they dropped the ball. I'll go to somebody else. If they're bragging about, hey, I'm going to do this thing, say, fine, I don't want to hear it anymore until you do it. Okay? I'm not impressed with words. I was excited for you when you first said you were going to do it. Good. But now you haven't done it, and I keep hearing about it. You haven't done it. I don't want to hear it anymore. Come to me and tell me when it's done. Then I'll be excited for you. Okay?
Another thing is when someone keeps doing stuff to you, like putting stuff on your property or taking stuff without asking, how you react with that?
Let them know that if it continues, if they don't live on your property, that you will report them properly for trespassing, for being on your property without permission. And you can get a restraining order at some point if you needed to say this person should not be on your property. And if they are, then they will get a ticket or arrested or whatever that is. They have to know you're serious.
All right, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay? I mean that's really a big part of all this, all right? Look, and by the way, for those of you that are trying to figure me out and where I fit in everything, these Q&A should help a lot. Watch how the questions are handled. Listen to the answers that are given. Think if you've ever seen anybody answer questions the way I do. I mean, I'm not bragging like, oh, they're so amazing, but just look at, these are all little pieces of the evidences that I'm either, Ephesians 4:11 or not, okay? To sit here for 2 hours and just answer anything that comes up. But listen to the answers, though. Because I watch some people do some Q&As, and the answers are wanting, okay, often. Okay, Rocky.
Thanks, Rabbi. I think this question is more for everybody else than Rabbi. You'll have to answer this to yourself. In Jeremiah chapter 30 and verse 20, it says, the children also shall as before, and their holy and their set-apart congregation shall be established before me, and I will punish all those who oppress them. Their nobles shall be from among them, and their government shall come from the midst, and I will cause him to draw near, and I shall approach me, and for who pledged his heart to approach me, says the Lord. And I shall be their people, and they shall be my God. In Jeremiah, it's actually the start of the greater Exodus. And that's what I really believe that I'm a part of, that this is what it's all about. We're in such an amazing place with an amazing man who is a prophet. And if you see him correctly, your whole attitude and outlook in life is going to change. You'll intuitively know what to do that used to baffle you. You will start to do things that you're supposed to do. You'll know that you're a wheat and not a tare because you're going to know that for what it's worth.
Amen. Appreciate it. Okay. You'll have to go back if you're watching and read Jeremiah 30 because you got some of the pronouns messed up between the I's and U's and whoever, but just read it. You'll get the point. It was a good point that he was making. All right, Shira.
Thanks for the second dip. A couple things. I appreciated what you had to share with Deirdre because women need to know how to arrange their environment so that they won't be attracted, violent men won't be attracted to them. And one thing that I've kind of learned is a victim, there's a posture that they have. They have an unhappy face, their head's down, their shoulders are slouched, they probably walk slowly. Those also are very attractive to violent perpetrators.
Yep. And sometimes but again, sometimes you have a very energetic, happy person who just happens to be in the wrong place.
Yeah,
at
right.
the wrong time.
It's like I don't go out shopping at Walmart at night in the dark. You know, that's. Sure. But I found that just learning to do a little bit of bluffing when I'm out by myself. I'm mostly always by myself, and head up, think about Yahweh, keep a smile on my face, and walk like Rabbi. It works.
Yeah, I haven't slowed down the speed of my walk, even though I'm in my 60s now. That has not happened. So.
But I did find a wonderful tidbit. You may have seen it also. I do follow all kinds of research about the brain because, you know, those of us who are elderly, we want to know everything we can do to develop our brain, but you are going to love this. I came across a tidbit where they found an isolated part in the center of the brain. I can't pronounce the name of it, but they've been doing research and they found this is the part of the brain that is in charge of doing things that you need to do but you don't want to do, which boils down to discipline. There's actually a place in the brain where you can develop it, and the more you discipline yourself and do what you don't want to do but you know you ought to or you need to reach a goal, the more you do that, the bigger that portion of the brain gets. And the bigger it gets, the more dominance it has over your thoughts. And I just thought that was terrific.
Awesome. Appreciate that. You know, look, and again, if you ever worked out or did anything athletic, you know, I started swimming again, so I swam on, I don't know, Monday or Tuesday. I started earlier in the week. I didn't really want to, did it. Then I thought the next day, okay, maybe I'll do it again. And then the third day, I really was like getting more tired and sore from the first 2 days. I was pretty much swimming pretty aggressively with that, but I went and did it anyway. So again, it gets easier when you start to do these things and consistently do them, right? Same thing with going to the gym. Going to the gym the first time's the hard part, the second time's hard, but when you start going after a couple of weeks of consistency, it becomes much harder to not go. Because then you'll feel like you're missing something because it becomes a part of your routine, right? Because you have the discipline now. All right, Taylor.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Sorry if I pause. I'm out of breath, so.
Well, you're carrying an extra load.
So with Grayson's question, what he asked about God, you know, hating Cain and all that stuff. Esau, sorry.
He didn't like Cain very much either, but okay.
So in my heart, like I trust that Yahweh is working with all of us and that he's revealing things as we're going along in this. But I guess a part of my heart is kind of not worried or anxious, but like a concern where it's like when I first came to the walk, like I knew like I had situations with family members and my dad and just other people asking me like, oh, you can't answer these questions, so like how do I trust in this when I don't know this? And I know that, like you said, these parts of the scripture, it's like it's not like detrimental. You don't need to know it, but at the same time, how do I deal with those questions that are in, I call it your box that you have, like that we don't know yet, or that you
Right.
haven't been revealed. So like,
How do you deal with it, or how do you deal when people kind of call you out on it?
I guess in myself, if you can pinpoint what it is, I don't know what it is inside of me that is like, I feel like, man, like a part of me is like, okay, am I being unwise for not knowing this, or digging deeper to?
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're talking to others or you're talking to yourself, because I know people, when you're new at this, may say and ask you a question, you can't answer, like, oh, well, how serious are this? You can't even answer the question. The answer is, I'm doing this not because I have all the answers, but because I know the relationship that I have. I have a relationship, and because of that relationship, I want to learn to do everything that pleases him. And as I learn, as it's revealed, I'm going to do. Okay? You can have the same discussion with yourself then by saying, I don't need to know everything, but I need to do what I can with what is revealed. Okay? Not knowing something doesn't hurt you. Pursue it if you can, like Grayson did, he asked the question. But if you don't get the answer, that's fine. You've done the pursuing. You may get the answer later in life. I got a bunch of things that I learned later in life that I didn't learn initially on this walk. His timing of when he decided to reveal something, okay? I learn a ton by these Q&As because a lot of times I get a question I've never had to address before, and then he'll give me an answer. I'm like, good, now we both learned, okay? But it's about being concerned with your level of relationship and what you're doing with what was revealed. So if you focus on that I'm doing what I can with what's revealed, I don't have to worry about the things that aren't revealed. Because remember, the things that aren't revealed belong to him.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay,
so
good.
Is that the answer to, I guess my second question is, like, what distinguishes him between, because I know in the church, they had like everything wrong pretty much. I mean, they had
Well, a lot.
a lot wrong. And then in other religions, they're always searching for everything, but then Yahweh's kind of like, what's the reason for that, for him to, do you think, to conceal certain things from us? Is it a trust thing,
I don't know that I would say that. I mean, look, he reveals, once he pops your bubble and you find a teacher like me, for example, he can reveal a lot really quickly that you did not know. Because there's a ton that if you guys are just coming out of the church and really had never, that when you come and listen to me teach, I mean, you're learning so much that's now being revealed, right? Okay? So he's revealing the things through the teachers. That's the whole point of the Ephesians 4:11 things, that the teachers are going to be able to reveal to you the things he needs you to know so that you can walk appropriately, okay? And so why doesn't he reveal other things? Most of the time because you don't need it at this point. Not because you can't handle it necessarily, although some things maybe. But really, if you think about it, if I'm your teacher, we got 700 teachings out there that cover almost everything. So much that's revealed is there. And until you listen to all of that and learn all of that, you haven't really covered all that's revealed. Carolyn, she's coming back up. Yeah. And so, when you say, why would he not reveal? Well, it could be that it was revealed, you just haven't found it yet. Or it could be that it's just not necessary to where you are, and being okay with that missing piece. Because it's not missing necessary to your walk, it's just missing informationally. Now, remember, the whole point of the relationship is trusting him. Okay? So, when they made the covenant, he hadn't told them almost anything yet. I mean, he's given them a little bit before they get to Sinai, but the majority of what is required comes after, and they agree to trust him without the information. Okay? Good, I covered it before you got to ask the rest of it. Good. Sometimes you got to be, not that you weren't, but sometimes you got to be patient, because until I finish talking, your answer still may come. All right. Because he knows what you're needing, and it's just coming out little by little until he gets there. All right? All right, Carolyn.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hey.
I really appreciate what you talked about prayer and how that relationship gets developed as we pray. I was kind of thinking about when your friends and family that are Christians or Catholics, when they ask you to pray, it's just because they're trying to get the numbers and stuff like that. How would be a good response? Like, do you just say, okay, I'll pray for you, or I'll pray that God's will be done, or...
Look. I just want to rephrase the beginning of that. I don't think they have a number in their head. They just think that if I ask more people to pray, it will influence him. That's just a thought that's in the back of their head. They're not really conscious of it, but that's what they were taught. Now, if somebody asks me to pray and they've got a legitimate thing to pray for, I will tell them I'll pray for them, and I'll pray for them because I'm showing compassion for them. That I think, if I find out that somebody's got some sort of health issue that's really potentially dangerous and whatever, they want me to pray for them, I'll pray for them. Okay, and I'm going to pray the way I pray. I'm going to say, Father, I'm aware that this thing is happening, and I care about this person, and I'd love for you to intervene, and nevertheless, your will be done in the situation, So remember, because that's part of me demonstrating my caring for the other person. So if someone asks me to pray for them, I'll pray for them. Look, we had gotten the reputation of being a place to pray to that my rabbi, not mine, but my family's congregation, the rabbi's wife used to ask my mother to ask me to pray or us to bring it up in our congregation. Even though they knew we were Messianic, but she's like, well, couldn't hurt to go ahead because, if they're praying, this is not something that they do in the synagogue the same way we do it here, okay? So I thought that was interesting that she would ask, us to pray, all right? But if someone asks you to pray, if it's something that's appropriate, say, sure, I'll pray, all right?
So does it mean that if they don't get what they were asking for, that, maybe her relationship isn't as good as she thinks?
No, if they don't get what they asked for, there are reasons. We don't necessarily know the reasons. It could be that Yahweh decided the timing's not right. Could be decided that he wants them to do certain things that they haven't done yet. It could be anything, okay? They still got an answer. He just didn't give them what they wanted, okay? Can I make something really clear? Because I think we talked about this, I don't know how many weeks ago. Most people who have health issues that pray don't get healed. Do we know that? Because every one of us that gets a major health issue prays. And everybody you're related to that's, at least in the Judeo-Christian world, prays when they find out they've got cancer, they got this, they got that, some other, whatever it is, okay? And the vast majority of them still end up with that playing out and it going whichever way it goes. Because it's not a you pray, it gets fixed system, okay? And so let's just understand that. He may choose, and when he does choose, by the way, to intervene, it's because intervening will help something along the path, all right? Remember, these miracles are meant to strengthen faith of somebody or multiple somebodies, and so, or because there's a purpose for, look, Rabbi Tom was going in for surgery a bunch of years ago. He was worried about dying. It was not a big, it was a big deal surgery, okay? It was a very big deal surgery, and he talked to me about it, and I said, don't worry, Abba's not done with you. You're going to be fine, okay? Now, I did that twice. Okay, so twice, 2 different surgeries, all right? Now, I didn't do it on every surgery he had, and he was fine with other ones. But sometimes Abba has given me the inspiration to tell the person, no, you're going to be fine. But the whole point was that he was not dealing with something that should have easily been a no-brainer. He was going to be fine. But the point was, Abba, I believed, wasn't done with him. So the healing wasn't just for him, it was because Abba wasn't done with him. And he got healthier, and now he's been, from part-time to full-time, working and answering phones and doing all the things that are blessing you guys in the body that he wouldn't have been able to do had he died 4, 5, 6 years ago, whenever it was that we had the first surgery that I said about this, okay? All right, so my answer was, I believed at that time, I said, you've got work to do, you'll be fine, okay? Now, that being said, when he heals somebody, it's sometimes because they need to do something. There's some purpose to it. See, we all want to just be healed because we don't want to die. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody really wants to die. If they do, then they have some other psycho-emotional problem, right? I'm not judging that. There are people that really have some serious problems. But most people in any kind of healthy emotional place don't want to die, so we pray. But he doesn't always answer with healing and yes, okay, to do the miracle. And so we don't necessarily know how to figure out why, though. Why did he heal one and not the other? Most people don't get healed, though, so just understand that, all right? Grayson. So we're sticking with the Grayson Taylor family.
Figured I'd come back up. So for Romans chapter 9, verses 20 through 22, is that referencing like what we previously referred to as like NPCs?
Romans 9, 20 to 22, right?
20 to 22.
But who are you, a man, to talk back to Elohim? Shall that which is formed say to him who formed it, why have you made me like this? Does the potter have the authority over the clay? And the same. And if Elohim desiring to show wrath and to make his power known with much patience, tolerated. No, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think this is clear who it's talking to from that point of view. Look, we have kind of jokingly, but not so jokingly, talked about that there are people that kind of like, if you ever played in role-playing games, not that you should or whatever, but a lot of people did in their life, there are things called NPCs, which are non-player characters, which means that they're part of the game, but they're not really part of the game. Okay, but they're necessary to interact with as part of the game. Okay? It's like when you watch a movie and there's a ship of some sort that has a crew. 90% of the crew you never get to meet, but they're on the boat because they're needed for the story and to have a crew. But the few people that are actually part of the critical part of the story, those are the ones you get to meet and they get to interact. And they're not necessarily the most important people. They could be one of just the members of the crew, but they're going to have something important happen with them. Everybody else is there because they need to be there for this to all play out, okay? So there are some people in life that may just be here because they're just here as part of that, not because he chose it that way, but because you're going to choose to be that way. You're not living life. You're choosing to be a non-player. Players get in the game. Players are actively doing the things that are expected to be done. So you end up choosing to just be a role player, like a separate, just a person who exists to interact with. That's your choice. So I'm not saying that Abba has given you, well, it's not fair. He picked me to be just a non-player. No, you choose to be a non-player because you're not playing. And that's kind of what I'm understanding, that this is a game to some degree. He gives you the rules and the expectations on how to win the game. I'm not stretching it too much. Paul calls it a race. A race is a type of game. And you run to win. And so you're told how to win. Okay? But you don't win by beating everybody. You win by accomplishing the expectation of the tasks that are at hand. Then you get to win. Okay, so everybody can win. If you choose not to play the game, then you become a non-player character that people are forced to interact with because you're here. Okay? Go ahead.
So in reference to like verse 21, does not the potter have authority over the clay from the same lump to make one vessel for value and another one not for value?
No, but he's simply saying is that he's going to make both, but then unlike a piece of clay which can't choose, where he's saying I make one and make it a really fancy something, another make it just a really nothing something. He's saying that we actually choose to be whatever we choose to be as far as value. Because the clay is still being made into a human being. But you choose to be valuable or not to him. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, and so all of that would take place post bubble pop? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, because pre-bubble pop, you haven't made a choice yet. Okay, where you're going to be in the game, are you going to play the game, are you going to quit the game? You understand what I'm saying? I don't want to diminish it by calling it a game, but it's a game. This is literally the game of life. Okay? And you have choices to make in the game, just like in any other game. You get to a crossroads, you got to make a choice. Do I go left, do I go right, do I go straight, whatever it is. Okay? And so you're given choices. Lots of games have those. You pull a card up and it gives you a choice, right? Or you could choose not to play. But that doesn't happen until you have a choice. The, quote, bubble pop thing that I always refer to, that's when you now are actually making choices and you're now in the game, okay? Now, don't worry about the people that haven't had their bubble pop. They'll get their bubble popped at some point, maybe in the millennium, if not now, but they will get to play or choose to play, all right? All right, Jennifer?
Just to clarify what you were just saying with the NPC and the player or whatever, would that kind of be like the wheat and the tare?
I was thinking of mentioning that. It could be related to that. I'm not so sure if that's a good analogy, so I left it out, but it might work. Okay? But this basically came to the fact that in life we deal with people, and Elder and I, when we're counseling together a lot of these people, sometimes I look and say, well, I don't know. These people are just, the ones who are just not listening and just sort of kind of meandering along, even though they had their bubbles popped, they may just be NPCs. They're just not really playing the game. They're not putting in the effort. They're not playing. They're not participating as Abba expects them. Now, I'm not going to decide and choose to label someone that. I just think that may just be, that was the best analogy that popped in my head one day, okay? That they're here, they're necessary to interact with, okay? But I don't know, all right? I guess I got it also from the one that was crippled, and then Yeshua healed him, and they said, well, was it because his parents sinned or because he sinned? He said, no, he was this way so that one day I would show up and I would heal him, and that all of you would see the miracle. Did that miracle affect the guy? It seemed like it did, but who knows? He may have just been there so everybody else got to witness it. I don't know, okay, how that would play out. It's all going to be about what he chose to do with it once he was healed, right? Then you identify what you are. He gives everybody their opportunity to basically identify what and who you are. Are you on his side? Or he says, you're either on his side or you're an enemy. I mean, which way are you going to act as, okay? Jennifer?
Rabbi, I've got a question. You talked about it, I don't know if it was the zone 2 this morning or zone 3, the question around like kind of spiritual demonic world and did that exist and stuff. And you were saying, yes, you do believe it exists. I had kind of like a weird thing happen actually early this morning where I experienced something that I have experienced like in the past. And I used to be like very charismatic, and before that like had weird spiritual experiences outside of Christianity. And so I had like a weird like in between dream state thing where I felt like there was like almost like something happening. Like felt like I was like being attacked kind of like, and it was, but most likely what I'm guessing is it was exhaustion. I was so tired and I just wasn't sleeping well. And I think I was like in between that dream state. And every time I was like waking, something weird was happening because I wasn't actually awake. Right. But my question is maybe kind of twofold, but is like in the past, moving into a new place, I was in first night in the new home, I would have like been praying, and like writing scriptures on the wall and doing all this weird stuff, right? Like that was what I was taught. So when that happened this morning, I did eventually pray and then just fall asleep. And, I just prayed, Yeshua, just like, take care of whatever's going on, just help me sleep. But in that moment, I was like, okay, am I safe? Like,
yes, you're safe.
Spiritually,
Okay.
am I safe? Is
all right,
something we should do?
Okay, so did you make a conscious decision when you were moving in the place not to do those things? Like, was there even a thought about, well, normally I would pray, but I'm not going to pray?
No, I didn't even think about it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was just a question, because if you had thought about it, you may have predisposed yourself, like, if I don't, what happens?
Yeah.
But look, the bottom line is this, okay? The mind is a very complex thing that we barely know anything about. Things that happen in our mind, we don't always know if they're real or not, because if you picture an experience in your head, your body and system will react as if it was a real experience. Okay? Because they've done an experience where you practice doing something in your mind and not just physically practicing doing it, and you get results from the idea that your mind did the practicing, okay? So that doesn't negate the fact that there is another world that does interact with us sometimes and in some ways. And not everybody goes through all of that. I don't know enough about it, but I know some people that have had a lot of experience with it in terms of being immersed in it to whatever degree that I believe them when they explained to me the world that they had been in. So I believe it exists. I don't know enough about it to tell you about it. I've not had that personal experience for whatever reason, and I'm glad they don't seem to want to mess with me at all, so I don't have that experience, okay? But the likelihood that there's something bothering you that you haven't invited in, you haven't done anything to invite in, you haven't sought it, is very low, okay? All right, so I would say that there's probably nothing going on there except your mind just going off and you're just tired.
I was just tired.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I had weird experiences many, many years ago, but I opened the doors to those things.
Right, in my opinion, that's the majority of it. People either opening a door or actively pursuing, because there are people that actively pursue that world because that's what they were told will give them the magic that they need or whatever it is, okay? But I don't see as much that world just coming and, just randomly choosing to bother people.
Well, and for me, since I have, as soon as I started becoming Torah observant and, started keeping Torah, I didn't have not one experience like that ever.
Right.
you know. And so that's why I think it was kind of like, oh, what is happening? Like,
Right, and
but
even-
also I really do think it was exhaustion.
But
I just-
again, even if it was a real experience, it would have been again because you were exhausted, okay? Because they look to go after the weak, the tired, the exhausted, where the doors might be open, okay? There was something else I wanted to say about this. Let me think about it. If you would work on, I know what I wanted to say. I have interacted with quite a few, okay, people that have had experiences in those worlds or still having experiences now. They fall into one of two categories. They were either brought into that world, not always voluntarily, okay? They were brought into that world by others in that world, others who dabble in it, or they are psycho-emotionally very challenged, okay? I've had almost everybody that's ever called here telling me about hearing voices and having this and having that, who were not actually brought into that world. They already had other psycho-emotional problems. That doesn't mean that it's all made up and it's happening in their head. They just might be more susceptible to that because they're already weakened in their psycho-emotional state. Or it could be something that's just going on sideways in their head. What I'm saying is I've not talked to anybody who is strong and sound mentally and emotionally that has this problem unless someone brought them in, okay? That's just my experience. I'm not saying that's all the experience, the end all be all, but in my experience, somebody who's of sound mind and has a decent amount of personal internal strength, they don't have these experiences, okay? Now, I have met some people that were fairly strong in their mind that had these experiences, but they were brought into that world. So it didn't just happen to them, it was done to them. In other words, they were brought into it, okay? It's a different way. Because I do get calls every now and then from people, and if you're listening, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend you, but some of you call up and you're really upset about these things that are happening, and I'm not saying they're not, but a lot of it has to do with that you're not of a sound mind. So even if the outside, other world interference in your life is, even if it's real, I believe it's happening because you're not of a strong and sound mind. I believe they don't bother me because I'm a strong and sound mind. So I'm not susceptible to that. Okay? And I've been exposed to it plenty where I was like, no. Okay? They're just not gonna, it's not like they're scared of me. I think there has to be a certain thing that works. Either you have to be brought into it or you have to be weak and susceptible to it type of thing, okay? Or both, okay? Now, am I about right with most of that? Okay. I'm just asking one of the people that would know, okay? Okay, she said spot on, okay? So what you need to do, all of you that might be dealing with this, is work on being of sound mind. Now, Jennifer, in your particular case, you were in a weakened state, you were exhausted, so that could have allowed for a little element of something. I think when you get good amount of rest, nothing will happen, you'll be fine, okay? All right. Marlene.
Yeah, my first time up here. I was waiting for the line to die down, but now the kids are here, so I'm going to hurry up.
Yep, you're last.
I'll try to hurry up.
You get to finish this up.
Okay, so I just want to make a comment about the prayer we've been talking about. And I'm realizing that for me, like you were talking about communication and us having compassion and Yahweh being pleased with that, I do find that the prayer, either if I'm bothered by something and I'm normally praying for me to be in alignment with him. And that normally works out whatever internal struggle I'm having, which is why I'm praying. Or obviously, like when other people ask for prayer, I just, pray like you said. So, okay, one I wanted to bring up, this is like, I don't know if it is helpful for the walk per se, but anyway, I've been writing out the Torah, and I got to Leviticus 20, verses 15 and 16, and in those verses it's talking about, a man doesn't libel the beast or a woman doesn't libel the beast. And so I know very often when Yahweh is telling us not to do something, it's because there's the nations that are doing these things. And so what it brought to my mind was the mythical creatures that are in like stories and stuff like that. who is like part human, part horse, part human, part goat, any of those kind of things, I was wondering if maybe they were actually real and like they had been produced, or, you know, perhaps people were trying to make people like that, you know, mixed creatures, and then it just didn't work out, you know. I don't know if there's, I meant to research before I asked this question, but do you have any idea about anything like this, you know?
No. I mean, look, these are thoughts that have come about. I mean, there are people that come up with all kinds of theories and ideas. I don't think that when you look at us from a genetic point of view that you can mate. There are certain things you just can't mate with each other, and it won't produce offspring, okay? And it's just the way that they are. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't have the idea that, you know, somebody decided to get in a lab and do an experiment to try to create something. We don't really have any verses for any of that. Of course, you got all kinds of people believe all kinds of things about ancient aliens and everybody doing all this other things, so certainly all of that could be what's going on there. But we have these stories and these mythologies that bring up things like minotaurs and you know, centaurs and all these other things that are part human, part whatever. But that being said, you know, what we have is something that should be much more obvious, is that why would you lay with a beast? Okay? And so you'd think those kind of instructions should not be there. Like the ones about your mother-in-law. Why would anybody do that? You know what I'm saying? Okay? But these are instructions that are in there that you would think that shouldn't have to be there. That should be obvious. Okay? But they're there, which means that it was a problem at some point. So they were, now whether it was a problem in the nation itself or the nations around them or whatever, you know, it was prevalent enough that it had to be said. Okay?
Okay, so this is interesting. I was thinking about these mythical creatures, and then it popped in my head a memory that where I lived for a time, it was actually a common thing that guys would cheap.
Yep.
And I did not even remember that until now that I'm talking about this.
Yeah, I remember meeting somebody and I said, where are you from? And I won't say where they said they were from. And I said, really? So what's that place like? They said it's where men are men and sheep are scared. I thought that was pretty bizarre and gross, but this is not a completely uncommon thing, obviously, or it wouldn't be something that gets brought up and put in scripture, okay? It is what it is. All right. Thank you for ending us on that disgusting note, as we're now going to go and have our meal. What'd you say? You're welcome? Thank you. Okay, good. All right. Excellent. And I'm glad you waited for the children to come down for that. That was well-timed. You had them excited about mythical creatures, then you went off sideways, okay? So, you know. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to close up Zone 1.